and the boys like to shake, rattle, and troll.
It's time for the award-winning Shake, Rattle, and Troll.
Yeah, kiss the one that I rock your favorite pose. Me and the boys gonna shake.
A show for the serious fishermen as well as the novice looking for tips from the pros. Shake, Rattle, and Troll, brought to you by Bill Luke Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram. I-17 and Camelback Road since 1927.
Yeah, we got the power, we got the speed. We're running wide open on a midsummer breeze. Fresh water, salt water, watch out, boys. Bass Daddy Don's gonna make some noise. It's me and the boys gonna shake, rattle, and...
Now, here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, Don McDowell.
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm Don McDowell. Welcome to Shake, Rattle, and Troll, the Sunday edition. Why is it the Sunday edition? Because we don't do it on Saturday. Our voice of moderation and reason, my co-host, Special K, John J. Colazar Jr. is in the house.
Well, good morning, Bass Daddy.
I trust you have made the run on South Mountain in the dark successfully?
There's always a good thing about headlamps at that hour, yes. 3.7 miles, did a little over an hour, so I'm happy.
Nice. Did you have a snake stick?
I had several snake sticks, my walking stick, and any rock I can pick up.
Well, there's a really cool snake stick on the market. It's called the Judge. It fires a 410 shotgun shell.
Oh, that would do nice.
In rotation with a 45 long Colt.
Yeah.
Smack him if you see him.
Snake.
And our senior wolf advisor is back, Terry B. Johnson.
Pleased to be here, Don.
John, love you. Thank you for coming down. You've had exponentially just a horrible week.
It's not been a good week.
It hasn't. You know, we're expecting Congressman Paul Gosar in the studio with us, but you know we've got a lot going on, and in talking with the congressman, you know we've got the ISIS thing going on, we've got the Ebola thing going on, we've got open borders, we've got IRS acting up, the Secret Service acting up, and just VA and on. The list is long, and my hat's off to those guys. And Congressman Gosar has been instrumental working with the Fish and Wildlife Service on the hatchery and just a number of other wildlife issues. You're been working on the cooperative agencies, which are, 28?
About 28, yeah.
Minus one?
Minus one, a coalition.
Yes.
I like that, a coalition, because it certainly isn't cooperating at this point.
No.
Well, neither is the 60-nation coalition trying to save Iraq that Obama's given away. That's not working.
I'm not going to dispute anything at the moment.
I think the answer there is that the problem lies not in the word you choose, but in the folks that are working together or not working together.
Yeah.
Call it a coalition, call it FRED. It's basically a group of organizations that have some problems with the way Fish and Wildlife Service has been approaching Mexican wolf recovery and reintroduction.
I am one of those persons that has a major malfunction with that. You've been very successful, and I appreciate all the hard work that you've done. It's an arduous task, spanning a couple of decades and then some.
Is it 3 decades now?
It's 32 years.
That's what I thought.
It's
good Lord, man. You have been mired in wolf issues for 32 years.
Well, I helped create them, so I might as well try and help solve them. That's kind of the way I look at it. But, 32 years. Dates back to a little trip I made into Mexico looking for wolves and grizzly bears and thick-billed parrots and all sorts of things with Dave Brown, who wrote the book on the Mexican wolf in the Southwest. And it's still the best book ever written on the Mexican wolf issues. But it's a very historical perspective. It's a very negative one, and it was very accurate at the time. There was very little hope that anyone would ever have the stone, so to speak, to try to reintroduce Mexican wolves and actually recover them. He didn't think the agencies had the political capital.
You just mentioned the word that drives me absolutely over the edge, and that is recovery. How can you define recovery? Are you defining it by science? Are you defining it by population counts? How do you define recovery?
Well, recovery of the Mexican wolf is actually fairly easy to define. You determine what kinds of numbers would be necessary to maintain a viable population without constant infusion of captive bred animals. And when you look at the Mexican wolf and compare it to a lot of other species, that's easy to do. You can look at about 1,500 to 2,000 wolves across the entire arc of their historical range and say that at this point in time, that looks very much like recovery. It's a viable, self-maintaining population without the infusion of captive-bred animals.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're here. We're into a very short period before the service starts defining the new rule. What's the deadline now?
Well, deadline right now, the expectation is that the service, according to the service this week, will be releasing the final EIS on November 28th. And then that's environmental impact statement on what they've been doing, and that would then also close out the non-essential experimental population rule. Then on January 7th, the service intends to release the record of decision on the EIS, which is required. I'm not sure yet whether this time it's going to be the same as it was in 1998 with the Secretary of Agriculture and the Secretary of Interior signing off on the record of decision. That's an important issue because the agriculture folks have some modest influence on the interior folks at that kind of level.
I always wondered who carried the ball on that one.
Yeah. It was carried primarily by actually a lady named Joy Nicolopoulos working within the Fish and Wildlife Service in Washington, D.C. in 98, and then Ag signed on. But there were some compromises necessary to get Ag to sign on.
Where's Jewel in all of this?
I don't know where Jewel is on this.
Other than hanging out with Ash.
Romance is in the air.
You think?
Well, I have to. Silence is certainly a very powerful voice, and the fact that they have allowed the process to go on the way it has gone on tells me that once again the Mexican wolf simply doesn't have the political karma that a lot of other issues do. There's a lot of attention being given to still the Northern Rockies wolves and other issues, but the Mexican wolf is just it's a small potatoes organism when you look at it from a national perspective.
Well, it is, but it's glommed on to small potatoes money, and as you know, we've tracked $32 million. We know there's probably triple that that's unaccountable. When you start kicking into DOJ investigation on the Center for Biological Diversity, the sue and settle aspect of the millions of dollars that they've glommed on to, I don't know how unaccountable this whole issue became.
Well, I can actually give you some history on that. I'm the one who started the budget tracking for the Mexican wolf, and I started it just because I was interested. I was working with Arizona Game and Fish as their chief of endangered species, and I was working on the wolf issues, and wanted to know just how much we're spending each year, and started taking a look at it. The number that you're using is the Fish and Wildlife Service number that's been posted, and that came out of the process that I started. It's a very understated number for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, I don't believe it for a minute.
It doesn't include a nickel of the time that all of the elected officials spend on this, and or the appointed officials or the game commissioners spend on Mexican wolf, and that's considerable.
Well, let's add one more too. The private sector.
It does not include anything from the private sector. It doesn't include a nickel of the time that is spent by county officials dealing with these issues. So yeah, it's grossly an underestimate, but it was the best estimate that we could get, and people have stuck with the process since I left the program, and they're still using those sorts of numbers. But they need to. When I started issuing them, I issued a table and would renew it 2 or 3 times a year, and I have some footnotes on that table, and it says exactly that. This is an underestimate of what's going on because it doesn't include all kinds of real costs, especially for people online. You take some rancher who has to take time out of Roundup to go into a Mexican wolf meeting to try to make his points known. And that's real time and real money to those folks. They travel in real vehicles with real gasoline being spent or diesel, and none of that stuff is accounted for. So it's an expensive enterprise. The opposite side of that, though, is if you don't have that kind of involvement, then you have an agency making unilateral decisions.
Yep, you're going to get what you get.
So it's the price of democracy. It really is.
Terry, knowing what you know, put a price tag on it.
I'll say probably, and it wouldn't go as high as you, but I would say probably $50 million is an easy estimate at this point. But recognize that does not include the costs of captive breeding. Those are entirely underwritten by the private sector as well. Fish and Wildlife Service approves a program, but the actual zoo animals are maintained by facilities like the Phoenix Zoo, which receive no government money whatsoever. So that's all private too.
Does that also cover any of the the aspects like the Center for Biological Diversity's lawsuits, litigation efforts?
No.
Doesn't include a penny of those. No costs of that. And the center certainly causes a lot of money to be spent on the federal side and on the state side, with constant FOIAs and public records requests and just all of the harassment that goes on that way. And they have legitimate law cases as well, because as we would clearly say at this point, federal government is not doing its job very well on this thing. And
well,
so they
it's
have a
not.
point well taken.
And, Gosar's one, Matt Salmon's one. I'm not real sure where Trent Franks is on some of these issues. In talking with McCain's office, there was, going back a month or so ago, he had Dan Ash at his office, and from what I understand, there was a little bit of a dressing down, let's say, about this whole issue. The hatcheries, the wolves, just the general performance of the Fish and Wildlife Service Region 2 out of Albuquerque. And with all the stuff that's going on, we've got some fights, you know that. We're engaged supporting you, supporting the department, supporting the commission, trying to get the populace engaged the right way. Because, there's two sides to this. There's those that don't want them. There's those that do want them. And there's such a large section of the population that doesn't give a damn one way or another, or doesn't know what the real facts are, and trying to get these guys engaged. And I think it's high time. I'm saddened and sickened that the Congress is in recess, or whatever they want to call it. We're waiting on the midterm elections. We can't get a damn thing done. But nationally, and I feel somewhat beside myself harping on the wolf issue when we got the ISIS issue, the Ebola issue, and all the things that are going on right now on a national basis that is summarily tearing this country to pieces. Yeah. So, anyway, having said that, we're going to stand down. Thanks to some of our sponsors, including Bill Chrysler Jeep, Dodge, Ram, I-17, and West Camelback Road. If you need a ride, they've got it. I'm Don McDowell with
Special K,
Terry Johnson.
We'll be right back.
I got my toes in the water, ass in the sand.
Get him, JK.
Oh, yeah.
He not only sings, but he dances.
I'm not sure after hearing the singing, I don't want to see the dancing.
He's a pretty good dancer. He's got the two-step thing going on. And
dancing I can do.
Woo-hoo.
Singing has never been a forte.
I can't do either.
Yeah, don't quit your day job. Nice. All right, we're back. You and I talked earlier in the week, and you gave me some of the worst news on the wolf front that I've heard ever. Our worst nightmare has popped up in northern Arizona. What's the deal,
Well,
TB?
just a week or so ago, I heard from some outside sources that a wolf had appeared on north of the North Rim, and that it's actually north of Grand Canyon.
Okay, define the term wolf.
Well, that's a good question. That's one of the things that has to be resolved. You have to get in and take a look at it and find out there are really three possibilities, and probably another one or two that are minor. But one is that it's a Mexican wolf. That's unlikely, especially in this case because the report that we got that described the collar, it's not a Mexican wolf type collar. So the second possibility.
Well, those are identifiable by the radio telemetry signal.
Also by that, if you can get in, if the radio is still functioning. Then the second possibility is that it's a wolf come down from the Rockies, which we've been predicting for 20 years, and northern gray wolf. And then the third possibility is that it's an escaped hybrid, or feral hybrid.
It wouldn't have a collar, though, if it was an escaped hybrid.
Depends on the collar. I mean, there are collars on hybrids.
They do.
Some of the folks keep radio collars on, just like you keep on a trail hound.
Okay.
You want to be able to track it. So there is that possibility. But that was the initial blush. And Game and Fish went up and flew right away to see if they could get a radio signal. And they got the collar signals from the Mexican Wolf Program and from the Northern Rockies Program, and they couldn't get a signal.
Whoa. Wait.
Yeah.
They were flying where?
They were flying all over northern Arizona.
Oh,
yeah.
Northern Arizona, and they were picking up.
They were not picking up any signal from a wolf up there.
What about the Mexican Greys?
Well, that's too far north. I mean, they know the Mexican.
Well,
Gray
okay,
wolf.
that's why I'm trying to clarify. That said, you said they were picking up MGWs.
No,
I wanted to know where
they had
were.
the frequencies.
They had
for
the frequencies, so they were testing all the frequencies up there, but they picked up no wolves of any kind up there north of the rim. And so the initial blush was, well, maybe it is a hybrid. But then I actually spoke with the director of the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources, and he gave me a little more detail than that. They had been tracking a northern...
You realize you like talking to Paul Harvey in
the rest of the story.
The rest
yeah,
of the
gets you all fired up, and he goes, oh, and then...
Well, you try to be rational in an irrational world.
This is not a rational subject to you.
Well, this is true. But it's a fun subject. Now, so Utah tells me, actually, we were tracking a northern gray wolf up north in Utah, and we lost the signal because the batteries on the collar, they're designed for a certain length of time. They were dead.
At last transponder designation, which way was that particular wolf headed?
Well,
not so much where it was headed. Where was it located?
Yeah, it was located north of. It was located in Arizona, and it's within a couple hundred miles easily of the border, and a couple hundred miles for a wolf is not a great distance.
We're talking south of the northern Arizona border.
We're talking. This animal was north of the Arizona border. It's in Utah when they were tracking it, and then the signals went dead. And they were tracking it with a signal that had been provided by the northern gray wolf folks. Okay, so now we have a loss of an animal up there. Battery went dead, wolf went dead, who knows? But then just a couple weeks later, we find a wolf down in a predictable travel route south of that in Arizona. So that pretty well escalates the possibility that it's a northern Rockies wolf. Now here's the sad thing, and this is Fish and Wildlife Service in a nutshell. They were not prepared for this eventuality.
After all these years.
We have been saying for 20 frickin' years that if the northern gray wolves in the northern Rockies would find their way south to Arizona and New Mexico. It's been predictable since day one. It's just a normal wolf dispersal pattern. So the problem is the service wasn't prepared for this eventuality, so they don't have a legal permit to go out and capture this animal in case it proves to be an endangered animal. So it takes them 30 days to get that.
Do they have a protocol established for doing it?
For doing what? For
recovering one? That's
no. Well,
they don't have a permit, but do they have a protocol on what?
Oh yeah, there's a capture protocol. Wildlife Services assist in recaptures. The state of Utah could. I mean, any one of the experienced wolf state agencies could assist them if necessary. But they've got to have that permit in place. If that wolf were to make it on the Grand Canyon National Park, then there's another permit that's required. And that one's not as straightforward as the federal permit. Basically, Fish and Wildlife Service has to issue itself a permit to go do this work.
Now, how tough is that?
Well, it takes 30 days because they have to advertise it in the public. It takes 30 days.
That'd take you about 10 minutes. Give me a piece of paper.
They have to put it in the Federal Register. You know, and that's part of the price of your democracy. You want to have a vote in this? You want to have an opportunity to look at this?
Procedure done, procedure.
It is procedure. And so that's legitimate. But the problem is, you've had 20 years to prepare for this moment. Yeah. Why the heck doesn't your permit cover this? Anyway.
Remember the Exxon Valdez?
Yes, I do.
It's called Sleep at the Wheel.
Yeah. Well, there's been plenty of sleep.
There's a band name then, isn't there?
Drunk in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, going back to your comment about congressional involvement in this, I'll make the same comment about Congress. Congress have been asleep at the wheel for decades on these issues.
That.
Yeah.
So is the Senate.
And it absolutely, both sides of the House. There's actually only been one effective move made by Congress on Mexican wolves since the animal was listed. And that's by Joe Skeen in New Mexico. Joe Skeen put a rider on the appropriations bill, said that effective October 1 of 2001, or was it 2000? Yeah, 2001, the service would have no budget for Mexican wolf unless they had an independent review of their recovery program. The reintroduction project is really what it amounted to. And that rider was put on the bill on a bill with about 18 months notice. And Fish and Wildlife Service waited until 2 months before the deadline to actually have that independent review conducted. And who did they ask to do it? Arizona Game and Fish, because nobody else could and would do it at that time. So
Arizona Game and Fish did the budgetary work for New Mexico for the federal Mexican gray wolf.
Yeah. And
why?
So, New Mexico, the rider was for the program as a whole, everywhere.
Right, everywhere.
But it was the New Mexico congressman who did it. Now here's the problem. Congress lost interest as soon as the rider was put on the bill. We did the review. I did the review in 1 week's time. And it was an objective review. That's all they asked for, or an independent review, not an objective review. I shouldn't call it that. It was anything but objective. But we did the review and we sent it in to Fish and Wildlife Service. It was actually long after the October 1 deadline that Fish and Wildlife Service began to move it forward in Washington. It never actually was delivered to Congress, and this is according to a Fish and Wildlife Service official who was part of this process in Washington, D.C. Congress never asked for it. The budgets continued moving. There was no accountability. It was just performance art, in my opinion, performance art on the part of Skeen during an election period. And that's really the difficulty we've had a lot of times. There's been a lot of congressional involvement in Mexican wolf issue, or interest, I should say. But the election passes, and that interest fades. And this is true of a lot of different things. And it's understandable. They've got lots of things on their plate. But what we need is a congressional official to step forward and say, I'm going to stick with this for the long haul, and I'm actually going to pay the price of learning the details to find out what matters to my constituents.
Yeah, it seems like the only time we have any real movement is during the election period.
Yep. Yeah. It's just a dance.
By the way, Terry, I read the draft EIS as well as the final environmental impact statement on the Mexican gray wolf program back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. They had a budget. Their budget said that it would be $8.2 million from inception to the year 2012 or 2013, when they would have 100 wolves, and the cost would be $8.2 million, and it's well over $30 million now. They're never bound by any monetary constraints because it just comes out of tax dollars, right? It doesn't matter.
Well, it is, but two things on that. The $30 million actually goes back to 1977. I could get no figures for before 1977, so that $30 million goes all that way.
Let's throw in the additional $60 million that Jim Beers uncovered that they swiped out of the
federal.
That was
for the Northern
Pittman Robbins money that hasn't been accounted for.
Yeah.
It's been accounted for, but it hasn't been returned.
Right, that's Northern Gray.
I don't care. Wolf's a wolf.
Okay.
Voice of moderation and reason. Please.
I'm not going to discriminate.
We're going to take a break.
It's a wolf. We are? I'm done. We'll be back. I think our producer Jennifer's giving us a little mood music just to get calmed down. Jennifer's not working on me today. Woohoo!
You'd have to have a whole lot more meds than you usually take.
What is that you said, John?
Stirring the pot.
That's what I'm doing?
Yeah.
No, man, I wish you hadn't gone to Mexico 30 years ago.
Serious.
You should have gone to Canada. Introduce yourself to a timber wolf and get face to face and enjoy the moment.
Canada's too damn cold for me, except in summer for walleye and pike fishing.
So what are you going to do when we have grizzly bears?
We won't ever reintroduce grizzly bears. I made a conscious decision when I started on the wolf not to do the grizzly bear, because even at that, brain dead as I am, you could see that there was no way you would ever meet the habitat requirements for grizzlies in Arizona and New Mexico. The fragmentation as a result of urbanization and everything else carves up the landscape in such a way you could not biologically justify a grizzly reintroduction.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned fragmentation. That occurs when a soft point bullet exceeds its capability to concave and it splits.
Well, let's talk about something, though, and this is really critical. When the decision for the release of the Mexican gray wolves, they had a series of areas, and they determined that they wanted the most rural, most secluded areas possible for the reintroduction of the the 10J non-essential 100 Mexican gray wolves. That determination came roughly 1993-94. Mm-hmm. That is almost at the exact time, right after that, when we had this tremendous explosion of off-highway vehicles and development of a road system that's incredible now.
Right.
So my question is there suitable habitat now in Arizona due to this fragmentation and a road structure for a Mexican gray wolf expansion?
Yeah. Yeah, there is. The wolves, Mexican wolves, or any gray wolf for that matter, around the world is capable of living in areas that are very much compartmentalized, very unlike a grizzly. Very unlike a grizzly.
So you're going to have pockets then, and that'll do just fine.
As long as there are corridors connecting the different places, things that they can move. But wolves are famous for using our highways for their highways.
Serious?
Oh yeah, that's one of the major causes of mortality in released wolf programs.
That's a shame.
They travel the roads, and it's not just that they're there and make an easy shot for dawn. It's that they're actually traveling the roads and then they get hit by a vehicle of some sort. And pups are really bad that way. So they use our highways. That's how we've had wolves that have gone to Flagstaff.
Well, that was the Purina Chow plant.
Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, he was hungry. I understand.
Yeah,
that.
go
Food
figure.
source.
Well, they also got roadkills and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
That
Roadkill was,
yeah.
and that was the other thing. We haven't seen. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about it, but the corridor between, say, northern Arizona, where the last of the ponderosas, where the elk reside, in Mexico, that's a natural corridor for wolves to travel, but they've shown a real reluctance to get outside of elk food zones.
Yeah, wolves are not stupid. I mean, they're not stupid at all. So they're going to go where the prey is, and except when you get that wandering male, that young Turk that wants to go look for some love somewhere else.
And all of a sudden,
Was
he
that
discovers
OR7
muleys.
in California that traveled over 3,000 miles in a short period of time?
Yeah, you
Well,
got it in California, Oregon, and
Yeah,
wolf has been everywhere.
Up and back, up and back. Yeah,
Wolves can move. I mean, historically, even when they were being pursued by people to eliminate them from the landscape, 400 miles for a wolf is nothing. 400, 500, 600 miles, easy. Not in a single day.
Well,
over a period of a few
we did
days.
some tracking on a tuna. You're going to love this. It was Terry the tuna, by the way. And in 600 days, traveled 25,000 miles.
That's a lot of
That's
swim time.
12,000 miles a year. Let's just say.
Shit, you get a hummingbird flies across the Caribbean every year, twice a year. I mean, basically that's their migration route. The animals are capable of incredible distance. The problem in all of this, though, is not the wolf. It's actually not the wolf. It is the way that the wolf is being managed.
Yes,
That's
sir.
the problem. People are the issue.
All right.
not-
So how do we take it out of the federal bureaucracy's hands? Put it in the private sector. Send them south where they belong.
No, private sector. No, but I mean, I understood.
John, the federal
state should
aspect
handle
is
it.
not working
No.
for the last 30 some odd
No.
years. It's not working.
There should be
What are you
localized
we're gonna
state control.
We're going to put you in as the wolf czar, let's
Sure.
say. Okay? What are you going to do to fix the problem?
Transport them south to Mexico.
No.
The good wolves, the ones that know how to make a living being good wolves, I'm going to move them into the Mexican areas that are safe habitat for them. And we know there's good habitat down there. The
And
question
then are
is,
you going to close the border? The border's open.
no, the border's going to have to be open.
Federal law requires
Connectivity.
that all of this connectivity. Federal law ultimately drives you in the direction of reintroduction for recovery purposes in Arizona and New Mexico, but recovery occurring because of wolf restoration in Mexico. That's 90% of the historical range down there. That's where recovery actually has to have its primary actions. And Mexico is working slowly along those lines. But the issue of wolves in Arizona and New Mexico, you will never ever arrive at a point in this country, as long as this country exists, when the American public will not want wolves in Arizona and New Mexico. The American public, you talk about 52, 53% landslide in a presidential election. Routinely, 75 to 80% of the Americans polled will favor
Of the
endangered
Americans polled. That's the key.
Okay.
That's
I'm not
scary.
talking about the Defenders of Wildlife handpicked.
No,
poll.
we're talking about
I'm
the one that
talking
was
about
done
it.
out of the group
Yeah.
out of San Francisco. That group out of San Francisco only interviewed 300 people in the whole state of Arizona and New Mexico.
You know what your exit polls are based on?
The people
in an
who
election? No, in an election?
No.
Like 5 people that are interviewed, and then they extrapolate from there. I mean, polls themselves have to have a statistically valid sample of people. They will never be as extensive as we would want them to be.
Okay, let's do this then. Is our urban dwellers going to determine the futures of rural America forever now?
No. And even in the Mexican wolf polls that I'm talking about, there have been polls here's one for you, knock your socks off. There's a poll in Catron County, one of the most conservative counties in
New Mexico.
in the world, and the majority of people polled in that poll favored wolf reintroduction restoration in Catron County.
Let's qualify that. Were they legal residents, first of all?
And what city did they live in?
What city?
We're talking countywide.
Registered voters.
We're talking countywide. We're talking registered voters. We're talking, are they legal or not? I can't answer that question.
Well, they need to ask the damn question. I'm sorry. It's real similar to the poll that I'm getting shoved up my pipes from the Southwest Bald Eagle Management Committee. We've got this poll. You look at the questions.
I haven't seen that.
You look at it.
That's funny. I started the damn thing, and I didn't get a copy
I know.
of the
You
poll.
need to look at it. You and I need to go roll around in the parking lot for that one. You seem to be starting a lot of stuff that we're getting shoved down our throat.
Hey, I started wonderful things.
Well, I know. I get it. But my point is, every time I hear poll, you go and investigate the poll. John investigated the Sandy Bar poll.
The Sandy Bar poll is a joke.
Summarily sucks.
Yeah.
I gave them 300 signatures on a petition that was very, very clear. It asked one question. Would you favor lifting the Eagle restriction in the not Salt River, upper arm of the Agua Fria in favor of a silent, quiet zone for the birds?
Yeah.
And they went, we can't accept this. Yeah. You know why? I didn't do it in downtown Phoenix. I didn't poll homeless people.
Yeah.
I didn't poll illegals. I didn't poll gays. And everything along with it.
Come on.
I've got a legitimate, legal, scientifically conducted survey that means absolutely squat by the people that are out there using the waterway. They understand what you have created. Back to you, Terry.
Okay. I'll tell you why the poll itself is wrong to begin with. The premise is wrong. The premise is that people actually understand why the closure is there. And they also don't understand what some of the ancillary benefits are. I am a fisherman. Not a very good one, but I fish.
You are.
Okay.
Give yourself credit. Listen.
Okay. But here's the deal, Don. That closure, from an angler's point of view, is the best protection for largemouth bass spawning in Lake Pleasant that there is. So the entire spawning season, you can't get to the Agua Fria. You have all kinds of bass being produced up there that feed that lake. You take that closure away, Lake Pleasant is one of the most hammered lakes in America.
It is.
In terms of fishing pressure.
It is.
Give me that closure all through June 15th, the way it runs, and then you open it up and you have a second coming of bass fishing opportunity on Lake Pleasant. You can go up there and you can find bass that have been reproducing. You can find bass
absolutely
spawning.
Right.
That's protection. I've talked to pros about this, and so John Murray in particular, one of the most gifted pros to come out of Arizona ever, and they're in agreement with this. This is part of the ancillary benefit, but the benefit of that closure itself to Bald Eagle is for decades. That was, I'm exaggerating, for more than a decade, that was the third most productive bald eagle nest in the state of Arizona.
But it hasn't been for 5 years.
It hasn't. They go in cycles. They do. It may well come back.
Wait a minute. Aren't they maybe a little bit old to be mating? Is that a possibility? I mean, if they was the most productive for decades, I'm sorry. Everybody's got a lifespan.
Well, they do, and I can't tell you right now. I've been out of touch with that for a few years now. I don't know whether those are the same birds that were there 5 years ago or whether replacement has already occurred.
I don't know that.
Yeah, I don't either. If you go through replacement, it takes 3 to 4 years for a bald eagle pair to start becoming productive. So there are all kinds of things in the background, and that's why I don't rely on polls for anything. I don't rely on polls for Mexican wolfwork. My simple statement is the American public, the ignorant American public.
Thank you.
They're not the ones to be asking.
Exactly.
They're the ones who elect your congressional representatives that you're hopeful of
I
relying
would seriously doubt that. And if they're the ones, if you're talking to the people that have put Obama in office, you need to put a bullet in their head. Get it over with. The last 6 years have been absolutely hell.
Pass me the gun.
The next 2 years are going to be worse than the past 6 years combined. We've got ISIS. We've got Ebola. We've got IRS acting up. His Secret Service
we
guys
have
are
a representative democracy that represents the will of the people, and we get what we deserve.
Oh! Truer words were never spoken. How do you like to change? We'll be right back.
Guitars play, preachers preach, farmers plow, wishes go up and the world goes round.
Alrighty, we're back. Boy, Terry, it just seems like every time we get together, there's just so much to talk about. We've got a lot of issues. The poll thing, I can't even handle the poll. The only polls that I happen to really put a lot of credence in is stuff that coming off of Fox News, albeit they are mainstream drive-by media that they're doing on Bill O'Reilly, Greta, Megyn Kelly, and so on and so forth. The bad part about all that, somebody has propped up Geraldo Rivera. And now he's back, and he still hasn't trimmed his mustache.
I still haven't recovered from the picture he floated of himself without a shirt.
Oh, God.
Oh, dear.
I'm sorry.
It looks, is it my imagination, or has he really shrunk?
I think he has. I think he has gotten himself almost to the point of anorexia in his drive to lose weight and look thinner on TV.
You know, he's been a controversial figure for a long time, but I really...
Him and Al Capone.
Yeah, well, I really had to take my hat off to him when he embedded himself in Afghanistan when the Russians were in there. And, I mean, he looked and dressed the part. You couldn't tell him from a Taliban or a mountain fighter.
I believe that.
Yeah. And then Sean Hannity, same thing. He went over and got in the middle of that Gaza Hamas mess, and he's a changed guy. I mean, you can see the definite change, the Sean Hannity before he went and the Sean Hannity after he came back.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
you get a whole new perception of life when they're shooting friggin' rockets over your head or at you.
That I believe, and I choose not to learn that. That's not an experience I want to go through. But the bottom line for it all is a lot of this stuff. It's as long as they spell my name right in the newspaper, everything is fine. And no coverage is bad coverage, and the polls are the same way. I put no credence in polls whatsoever. I'm not in agreement on that one.
Here's the problem that I have.
don't care.
When we go, John and I and our crowd go to the commission meetings, go to the Wolf meetings, and we sit and listen to the Sandy Bars of the world, her specifically, and Juanita Coyote that's changing her name to Wolf or whatever the hell it is, and they keep preaching and pounding the commission and pounding the outdoorsmen with this poll, and it turns out to be crap.
Right.
That's wrong.
That's wrong, but shame on Arizona Game and Fish for not getting into the polls itself and finding out whether it was good.
In 1992, they did a poll.
I did that poll. That's my poll.
You seem to be the root of a lot of things.
There's called the root of evil.
Where is the poll? Where is it?
Who did you... I'm really fascinated now.
This is a good one. We used Behavioral Research Center over at the ASU to run a poll. We had no idea what we were getting into at that time. I didn't. I'd never run a poll in my life. As I say, I don't really believe in them. But we needed to do that at the time to set the stage for another step in our 12-step process of deciding whether to reintroduce wolves in the state. So we ran this poll, and we selected things, and actually tried to have, we had broad representation throughout the state, rural, urban. I lined out all the different parameters for the poll, but also wanted the cattle growers, the ranchers, to participate in this poll, and had their agreement right up until the last minute for them to provide a mailing list of their own, mail out the survey to make sure that we were sampling all of the ranchers.
Right.
And at the very last instant, the cattle growers refused to participate.
So all your responses were from all segments except those most affected.
Yes.
Interesting.
Shame on the cattle growers at that time.
And that was in what year?
That was 1992.
Okay.
That's when they published it, so the poll must have run in 1991.
Let's fast forward. When did you start your cooperating alternative management plan?
The cooperative alternative that we submitted was on April 15th of 2014.
When
We've
did
been
you
developing
start
for
that?
years. When did I start it?
Yeah.
I started that in 1987.
Okay.
That's when I started working on it.
When did the cattle growers, Arizona cattle growers, sign on as one of the cooperating agencies?
Okay, they're not a cooperating agency.
They never have been.
Yeah. What they signed on to was a letter supporting the cooperating agency's alternative.
Good enough.
That was only this last year.
Yeah, that was April 15th of 2014. They signed the letter that supported the alternative.
That was the first time that the cattle growers have ever been involved with that.
Yeah. But they'd been signatory to some of the earlier work that we'd submitted on the EIS, on the draft EIS. But they signed on to it on April 15th. And then just recently, of course, you saw the letters that they withdrew from it. And they withdrew from it in part because of the way Arizona Game and Fish entered into its negotiations with Fish and Wildlife Service here at the last minute. And I've told Larry Voiles, told Game and Fish this. I can understand that.
What did the department do wrong?
They did it in secret, without public notice, without public involvement, without the rest of the cooperators on that agreement being part and parcel of that meeting.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah. A little heads up. Now, when you look at it from the Game and Fish side of things, They had no choice at this point because Fish and Wildlife Service had refused every request we'd made and for the last 2 years to change the process so that people actually had an opportunity to engage in this EIS. They refused them all. Every single one. They refused the cooperative alternative. They dismissed it virtually categorically.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't even include it in the draft EIS.
There was no mention
in July.
in the EIS.
You've got nothing in there. So you've exhausted every remedy you have except one-on-one. So Game and Fish went back and under a Section 6 agreement with Fish and Wildlife Service, something I've been encouraging for 10 years to use as the primary vehicle for achieving what we need to achieve with wolf management. They engaged the Fish and Wildlife Service. The problem with that is it excludes every other frickin' cooperator out there and every other participant in the stakeholder spectrum. The only two that can be at the table are the state and the Fish and Wildlife Service.
I don't have a problem.
That's under Section 6.
Under Section 6.
I don't have a problem with that because of the guidelines that you yourself have created that identifies the protocol, the management caps, the this, the that, and 14 other things that a whole lot of people have agreed to.
If Game and Fish had told its partners, this is what we're going to do, and it's necessary for us to do it because we've exhausted every other remedy, and what we're going to do is stick to our guns in the alternative.
Exactly.
It would have resolved a lot of the cattle grower issues. But there's another issue with the cattle growers. There's a segment of the cattle growers, and it's fairly substantial. Wasn't represented by that wasn't part of the cattle growers who signed on to the agreement.
In other words, they are having their own internal.
They have a major internal, and the internal is over numbers. There are folks in the ranching industry who still want zero wolves. Understand that.
I got that.
But it ain't going to happen.
Nope.
There are others who say, okay, not a single more than at least 100.
I got that too.
You get up to 300, you lose them.
Bam.
Yeah. And that's what's happened.
So you have the ostrich section that wants to bury their head and say, we don't want any, we don't want any, we don't want any, no matter what. They know that they're going to lose in court every day.
And you got Fish and Wildlife Service.
And we have that in New Mexico, correct?
Oh, yeah,
Same
absolutely in New
attitude.
Mexico. Except in New Mexico, you have a Game and Fish department that has largely been absent from the wolf discussions.
But they're back. They're back. They've got a new director. They're back in
Can
the
they become
game,
involved
correct?
now at this stage?
They are not back into it. They're involved in Arizona Game and Fish is inviting them to be part of this Section 6 because they have a Section 6 agreement too.
Right.
Yeah.
But they haven't signed on to it yet.
For our listeners, we all know what Section 6 is. Describe that.
Okay, Section 6 requires the Fish and Wildlife Service to collaborate to the maximum extent practicable with a state that has signed a conservation agreement under Section 6. It's that simple. Maximum extent practicable. So if you've got a state that wants to do Mexican wolf reintroduction and management itself, the burden is on the Fish and Wildlife Service to cooperate with that state in making that so.
Now, here's an interesting thought as well, Terry. We know that without the support of the Arizona Game and Fish Department, Fish and Wildlife couldn't possibly do any of the work that's been done on the Mexican gray wolf in Arizona.
And guess what? Fish and Wildlife Service ultimately doesn't care, and I'll be that blunt about it. If they can get the wolves on the ground, it has never mattered. Whoa. No, let me finish this.
Go ahead.
This Fish and Wildlife Service has never let budget impede their effort to let Mexican wolves wander. If they can't get to a depredation incident and investigate, sorry, budget. If we have to take 2 weeks off because Congress has cut our budget or whatever, put us in a sequester, fine. Wolves will take care of themselves in the absence. The Arizona Game and Fish Department is the only frickin' agency in the entire country that has said we will be on the ground to manage Mexican wolves.
So if we pull our support, the feds don't care. That way there'll be a whole lot more collars going on Walmart trucks heading out of state.
Correct.
Yeah.
And under the ESA Section 6, going back, taking a little bit further to states' right, we do in fact have the right to manage ESAs in Arizona.
We not only have the right, we have the desire.
Yes.
And this is where we need congressional support done. I'll tell you about.
Wait. It's written. It's the law.
It is 1985 agreement that I developed with the solicitor of Fish and Wildlife Service, the Department of the Interior.
You did it again.
I did it again.
Are you keeping a list of all the stuff he's done?
Sadly, yes.
You read it at my graveside, please.
I'll be. We're going to all flip coins as he who goes first based on that.
Really? Okay. I've got to get it back up.
We got to take that break and now at the top of the hour for his meds. Kick him in.
If, and only if, we just stand up and go back to the original 100 cap, whack them after 100, we're done.
No, that was not the agreement.
No.
The agreement was a minimum of 100.
Yeah, it's at least 100. And the service
In 1995?
In 1998. The service has refused to define at least 100. And there are people in Fish and Wildlife Service staff that will tell you right now that 300.
When the stones finally drop here in Arizona, let's take your program, since you did it, 300 cap. After that, we're done. We're just done.
That's the way it was defined. If you go with at least 100, that's what Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming had, at least 100. They end up with 1,700 wolves, Don.
And they're breeding.
Now, here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, Don McDowell.
All right, hey, we're back. Thanks for joining the second hour of Shake, Rattle, and Troll in-house with us. Actually doing really well today, our voice of moderation and reason. My hat's off to you. You're pretty moderate.
Thank you.
Relatively reasonable. Along with our senior wolf advisor, Terry B. Johnson, Ranger driver. I have to compliment you on your choice of rides. A 3500 Dodge Ram.
I love it. I love it. It tows that Ranger boat.
It doesn't
very
care
easily.
what it tows.
Well, it does care. This one cares. It tows Ranger. That's it.
Well, they do build the best boat that they can. I'm just saying.
All right.
All righty. We started down one road. We ended up on a pretty bumpy road on the Mexican wolf issue. Rumor has it, according to Terry, we have some unqualified large wolves running around northern Arizona. How are we going to qualify this?
We're going to.
What are we going to do?
Eventually, we're going. The wolf in northern Arizona. It's only one wolf, and
well, wait, hold on.
One wolf we know.
Okay,
about.
hold on. We're gonna educate you on the subject right now. We happen to have the Northern Arizona of the ADA, the Buckskin chapter, John, and I'm going to turn this over to you since you chatted with our boys up north.
There was a rumor that there was a rust-colored second wolf that had been spotted, and they felt that potentially was a hybrid based on color alone. Have you ever seen a rust-colored northern gray?
No, but I've seen pictures of northern gray wolves that have certainly rust in them. And a lot of the coloration of wolf, and I'm not throwing rocks at your guys, certainly if they're out there hunting and they're careful
they will
observers.
throw rocks back at you.
And they'll throw bigger rocks than I can throw. So, but I'll say color in a wolf, gray wolves are extremely variable. You run from black to virtually albino.
Yeah.
You've got some that have an infusion of rust in them, but when you see rust in a wolf, you think more of a Mexican wolf. At least I do. But still, it's just a matter of observation. How
and this is coming.
Well,
this is all word of mouth. I talked to Rich Leitner from the Buckskin chapter, and he indicated that a lot of the woodcutters had seen two wolves. One was the black that they mentioned that we're talking about that potentially has the collar, and the second one was a rust-colored one that somebody had mentioned they felt it was a hybrid. There's no way of knowing just based on size.
Did they get a good enough look to see if it had a collar?
It did not.
How does one look at a wolf out there in the wild and
Good
say
question.
that looks like a hybrid to me?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't do it with a wolf in the hand. You've got to look at, and there are some things that will key you off to it, the way the nails are worn and some of those things.
That's determined after the biopsy is complete.
Exactly. You get the blood test back, and that tells you whether it's hybrid or not.
Okay, I have a question for you. We're going back to our friends at the Mexican Gray Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
We chatted briefly about the fact that there's been no expansion into their historic range, which would be further south than the Ponderosa Pines, based on the fact that we're not finding any elk in the cactus. Mm-hmm. And so they're staying where they are. And this is sheer hypothesis, but when we had the captive wolf program, they were fed exclusively roadkill elk. They were raised on it. They were developed on that. Then when they were released, I mean, I never saw deer being brought in to the meat lockers up at Sipe when they were feeding them. It was always roadkill elk. Is that a possibility?
No. They were fed deer in captivity in the acclimation pens before they were released. They were fed whatever carcass was available. And usually it's elk because elk are big and certainly there's more efficiency in harvesting a road-killed elk than there is in a deer carcass. Get a lot more meat that way. But they've been fed deer, they've been fed elk, they've been fed puppy chow. It's not puppy chow.
How about feral horses?
I can't say that they've never had horse meat, but I don't believe they have, and I know they haven't been fed sheep and or ranch dogs.
Okay, so they're just basically, they are what they are, an opportunistic predator.
Yeah, I mean,
if they find it, they'll
put
kill
me on
it.
the street,
They'll
I'm
eat
going to
it.
hit McDonald's or Burger King, whichever comes first. I don't care. As long as it's got, for me, beef in it.
And since there's basically a elk on every street corner, they'll stop in at the elk diner rather than trying to search out a Coos diner.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the wolf-friendly people will tell you that wolves take down the big and the beautiful, or they'll go the other way and
The weak
they'll
and
take
the
down the
sick.
weak and the sick.
Which we know is garbage.
They take whatever they can, whatever
Thank
is
you.
convenient. Yeah.
Yeah, there were not 16,000 weak and sick elk in Yellowstone. That's
No.
pretty well proven.
No.
So
There's just a lot of myth out there about what wolves do and what they don't do, and I'm not a wolf expert. I mean, I would consider myself an expert on the Endangered Species Act and the wolf program, but I've never seen a live wolf, man. I've been out there on the ground. I've never even
So you were never
seen a
part of
live
that?
live wolf free and wild. I've heard them many times, but I've never actually seen one. The closest I came to a live wolf was a dead wolf that had been killed by a mountain lion, as it turned out. And,
Really?
Mexican wolf. Yeah, we followed the radio signal in, picked up the carcass, and it proved to be a mountain lion kill. But we had a couple of those.
I'm kind of surprised that a cat would kill a wolf.
Well, it depends on what the encounter was. It might have been a fight at a carcass. It might
Yeah.
have been, lots of different things could enter into it.
Certainly not a pack, because a pack.
No, I don't.
John, that doesn't surprise me a bit. You can take an 8-pound house cat, put it on the face of a 100-pound pit bull. Dog's not going to like that.
Yeah. True
Pound
enough.
for pound.
True enough.
Ooh, baby.
Well, one of the myths that's out there is that and this is my perspective about the broad section of humanity that we know as the uninformed voter, the 80% of America that makes most of our decisions that really doesn't even know
They have no clue.
which end is up. Yeah,
Right.
it's a pretty harsh assessment of them, but I think it's real. And that is that the federal agency really knows what the heck it's doing. And there's way too many people that put their blind trust in federal agencies or in state agencies for that matter.
We can't.
An American voter should distrust government to the extent that they become informed about the decisions they're
Absolutely.
making, and they actually know what they're voting for or what they're polling for. There's so much of what Steve Keller used to call social acceptability bias. It's the one where you give the motherhood and apple pie answer because you know it's the right answer they want.
It's the
They're
answer they
looking for.
want.
Yeah. Not because it's what you really believe. Well, with the Fish and Wildlife Service, you've got a federal agency that has all kinds of political pressure on it. The service employees actually frequently talk about the states as being politicized by their commissions and their governors and everything else. No state wildlife agency that I've ever worked with has been any more politicized than the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Right.
Now, the service doesn't make its decisions based on polls themselves, and it shouldn't. No
They
agency
can't-
should.
That's not part of their mission statement.
But they're very cognizant of where the public is. And then certainly, when you get to the level of the director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, they're very aware that this 75 to 80% of America favors endangered species. So they know they can get away with a lot.
But the 75% acceptance is based on a myth. They're basing it on lack of knowledge. There is a greatly uneducated American public that makes decisions all the time.
If I can rely on ignorance to get me reelected,
You're going to get reelected.
I'm going to get reelected. And I'm going to play on that. I have this very harsh viewpoint about congressmen. What we need, and senators as well, is the whole elected process. But what we actually need is senators and representatives in the state of Arizona that will stand up for one thing in particular in this situation: restoration of state and tribal management authority for
Sure.
the Mexican wolf. That's the one thing we
Well,
need.
for everything, so we're talking about states' rights here.
Wyoming doesn't seem to be doing real well.
They will.
I don't think so.
Well, they're in John, in researching that was a different judge than Montana had. However, Wyoming's going back with the same attack and the same pretense that Montana did.
Two major differences. Wyoming and Montana and Idaho didn't start fighting the fight they needed to fight until there was a recovery plan in place. and an EIS in place. We don't have either one right now.
Bam.
If we don't get involved right now and change this ship, the course of action for the Mexican wolf program right now,
All right.
we're dead.
All right, we'll talk about how we do that when we come back, but I want to get into the salt water a little bit when we come back for just a moment. I'm Don McDowell with
Terry Johnson.
And
John Colazar.
Moderation. Reason. Two-step.
Well, I didn't really at the time, and the Mississippi River, she's a gold dry. The interest is up and the stock market's down.
While this song is playing, I want everybody to stand, remove your hat, place your hand over your heart. That is our national anthem right there.
It's also his ringtone message.
I know that. No.
All right,
sing that one well.
we're getting into taking back and managing our own stuff, Terry. At this point in time, I think we're at the junction where we've got to put our feet down. The department, the commission, has drawn a line in the sand a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
The cattlemen don't want to help them without their engagement. And if this thing is left to go the way it's going to go without our intervention, we're going to have wolves everywhere.
Right.
How do we stop it? What do we do today to stop the process?
First thing is Arizona Game and Fish has to do what it's doing: negotiate with Fish and Wildlife Service on the major issues included in the cooperators alternative. That's absolutely essential.
Is the commission strong enough with their direction to the department?
I don't think it's a question of the commission. I think it's a question of the department.
Yeah. When you're sitting at the table, it's just a much more powerful seat than when you're sitting distant from the table telling the guy at the table what to do. The commission itself is a very strong asset in the Mexican wolf program.
Absolutely, they
Absolutely. And the commission form of governance is essential. Let's not lose track of the let's lose track of the fact that in a lot of states, issues like these have caused state wildlife agencies to become departments of natural resources, so that there could be a tighter political rein, on them, and that's a disaster. Yeah. They need to do this, but we need the commission to stand strong, and they're standing strong. But they need to stand strong and also tell the department. This is my opinion, of course. One very clear message is that we need to have this Section 6 thing solid, and part of that is Section 6 requires the service and the state to agree on an adequate and active conservation plan. For the Mexican wolf, that adequate and active conservation plan should be an Arizona wolf management plan. We need one, and we need one yesterday.
Are we at the point of time where we need to litigate this?
No.
Why?
Because there are no
it.
decisions. The Fish and Wildlife Service has not made a decision yet.
Let's say
can't litigate.
November 28th, you can start thinking about it.
Yeah, on January 8th, you can definitely go after it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
right
then,
now,
no.
we need the commission to do this. We need the cattle growers to open up, and there are a lot of cattle growers that are receptive to this. That 300 wolves is a much better deal than at least anything. At least anything takes you to Idaho 1700. A firm cap at 300 or 325 or 275 or whatever in there. Number in that range. That is a good step forward for the state of Arizona and New Mexico.
The whole program, when I first got involved in this, it was absolutely no wolves. Right. Period.
Right.
Absolutely. Smoke every damn one of them. Okay? I'm just saying. Not that it's an emotional subject. I bought into, we'll go for 100.
Right.
And through my mentoring and education process, I will agree to support up to 300.
And 15%. 15% of the ungulate depredation is my key.
The geographical regions as expanded, which was a good move. The management protocols that are in place for the 15% on the ungulates. The capture protocols for bad wolves, and so on and so on and so on. I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are.
I'm good with what you've done. I'm good with what the department's done. What I'm not good with is the arrogance that the Fish and Wildlife Service keeps exercising on not recognizing our state's rights, the work that you've done, the work that the commission and the department is doing. And I'm afraid, maybe you can help me out on this. What is your prediction? What are we going to see in January?
I think in January,
as a final.
I think in January we're going to see. I'm not even going to say any specifics about elements of it. We're going to see a document that will make a decision that will precipitate untold years of litigation.
Doesn't matter which direction
Won't matter
it goes.
which direction it
Somebody's
goes.
going to litigate.
They have screwed up the process so badly, according to NEPA rules and ESA rules and procedures that they're required to comply with. There is ample opportunity for litigation to prolong this. So what we're going to end up with is a court-driven process that will cause us to live under the existing 10J, which means pouring the same number of wolves into the same limited area with the same Fish and Wildlife Service management that we've had for the last few years, with failure to eliminate a wolf that's been depredating multiple times.
Okay, if this goes the way I think it's going to go with the litigation from either side, is the department going to pull out? As far as, and I ask that because
who's going to be elected Attorney General in November?
Bronovich. I'm going to see to that.
Well, good luck with that.
We're going to try.
And the reason I ask that is the Attorney General is going to make the decision next year whether they will litigate.
Yes.
Yeah, the Attorney General's assistant assigned to Game and Fish is a member of the staff of the State Attorney General. So
correct.
There's your answer to your question. It is entirely conceivable that the Fish and Wildlife Service, if they are able to portray that the state has been a cooperator, remember bringing us into it now at the last minute?
Yeah.
That we are part and parcel of decisions that they will make. Will the state of Arizona then litigate a decision that its state agency has in effect been portrayed as signing off on? I don't know. They're political animals just like anybody else.
And if we had somebody like, say, Casper Milquetoast who represented us, would that be a bad thing? Yeah.
You think?
Yes, we have that issue. We have never, ever, in all the years that I've ever gone to any Game and Fish Commission meeting, had anything that even represented pushing the envelope legally.
No.
They don't generally hire litigators.
I know that. But they even then, we're so far to the conservative, don't rock the boat spectrum that it drives us crazy.
Risk management is all about government. I mean, government's all about risk management. And the easiest thing to do is to do nothing, always.
Which is what we've done phenomenally well.
They have a fiduciary responsibility to the constituency in this state to run that business.
And the commissioners and the director are firm on that.
Then why do they persist in not having a strong legal defense?
Because the legislature apportions their budget.
Yeah, and they don't want to spend their money that way. That's it, right there.
Hey, you're talking to a guy who was traded for a weed eater. Seriously.
I know that.
Traded for a weed eater by the Game and Fish Commission. When I first established the non-game program in 1983, the last budget cycle, the state offered the Game and Fish a choice between money to fund their non-game program they were developing or a weed eater. The chairman, Bill Beers, out of Prescott, Arizona, took the weed eater. I know how political sausage is carved up.
How did that make you feel?
It made me feel really wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah.
You kind of want to hang out at Starbucks and Birkenstocks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But,
no more meat for you, buddy.
No. All of this comes back again to down to the fox cannot guard the hen house, and what we need.
It can't do that.
And Fish and Wildlife Service is definitely guarding the hen house.
They're having chicken for supper every night.
Yeah. And they don't have to listen to anything. I mean, they're in Albuquerque. They're not listening to what, they don't have to listen to what goes, they have their meetings. Where do they have their meetings? Albuquerque.
Or Santa
Phoenix,
Fe.
Tucson,
Sacramento.
Santa Fe.
Yeah, very relevant points.
Yeah. And then when they do have a meeting, like they did in Pine Top recently on the Mexican wolf issue, you're given 3 minutes to make your case. They sit up there like bumps on a log.
Do no response.
It's
like a blue slip at a commission meeting.
When we did this in 1992 through 1998, by God, we had active meetings. I was on a panel up in front the entire time, and I had to answer on the fly every question that was posed, and I chose to. But the Fish and Wildlife Service people that were engaged, and they were good friends of mine, good working colleagues.
They bailed.
They sat there and let me do it. And one can look at that and say, well, you like to do it because you're a motor mouth. No, I like to do it because the people deserve answers.
So that explains all those little scar marks on your back. Those are the knife wounds from Fish and Wildlife.
And you know what the hell you're talking about, which is unique in this environment.
I thank you for that. We give it a try.
Well, you and Jim DeVos.
Jim is the political animal, by far.
Jim is a political animal.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what. As long as you're doing what the director expects of you,
you're
doing your job.
You can be a political animal. That's like being.
I chose not to do my job that way when I was at Game and Fish, and I was allowed not to do my job that way.
You can't be an effective point man when your platoon is unarmed.
That's true.
That's what Jim has got.
Sometimes, though, too, Don, if you have a general who doesn't make decisions, you're not going to have an army going anywhere.
No, you're not. If I got Dwayne Schroeder for the entire tenure of his commission said, you do what you need to do on Wolf right up until you make the wrong decision.
But then they don't have any legal backup.
Well, no, they're toothless unless they exercise their Section 6 agreement.
We need to exercise it.
They've got to do that.
All righty, we're going to stand down. When we come back, we're going to get with our master rod builder, James Guggenauer, from Rim Country Custom Rods, see what's happening over to Mama Lake. We'll be back.
My boat is full of gas. My old boss thinks I'm sick today. He won't have me to harass, 'cause I'm out here on the river, and he can kiss my big old back.
And everybody's saying James Guggenauer, downtown Payson, where the weather, yes, is always nice. James, what's happening?
Hey, good morning, Don. Great show this morning. Very informative.
I'll tell you what, Terry Johnson, has become our senior wolf advisor on staff now here at Shake, Rattle, and Troll Outdoors. Doing a great job. He's in a tough spot. He's done a lot of work, and, we're at a junction right now that the process is in process, and we're about, a month away of seeing what we're going to see.
Right. And I heard the reference about everything being political. I don't think it's by coincidence that the Fish and Wildlife is going to wait till after the elections in January before they come out with their decision.
I'm just wondering if it goes the way we think it's and hope it's going to go, or they wouldn't dare come out. Let's say it goes, the election goes to the right. Is the decision going to come out on the left? Well, I don't think so.
But another question for Terry. I heard him say that this is going to end up being litigated and everything will stay the same. Wouldn't that be a good thing if everything just stayed the same? Because every one of those wolves that they have in pens that they're trying to get out onto the landscape, every day they spend in a pen, the less they become like a wolf and more like a dog.
Well, but look at the reality on the ground. We haven't had until this year one release. We haven't had releases in 3 years. All the wolves, and the benefit of that is all the wolves that are out there are wild born, and wild born wolves are better wolves than captive born released wolves in terms of depredation and nuisance problems. So I'm not a fan of releasing any more wolves. I don't think that you need to release any more wolves, and I think the genetic issue that people come back to is a farce. The wolves that are out there are good wolves in terms of genetics, in terms of their behavior. They're doing what they do. When they have livestock depredation issues, they have elk depredation issues. We have to take care of those sorts of things. But wild-born wolves are better wolves than captive-release wolves.
Did you just say good wolves?
Yep, I said good wolves.
Good in terms of only that they tend to steer clear of the populace.
Yeah, there's no good or bad, and he's absolutely right there. Wolves tend to shy away from civilization, but they'll come in right at the edges. But a wild wolf is just more human aversive than a captive reared wolf is. It's just the way it is. No matter how much aversive conditioning you do in captivity, I'd rather take that wild born wolf. That's why I would rather not see any more wild captive born wolves released in Arizona and New Mexico.
Well, you're known as the wolf czar. Make it so.
I wish that it could be.
What about Mexico? I know that they had some born in Mexico in the last couple of years that they've started, doing the pens down there. But releases in Mexico have been failures. So far.
No,
jump in here anytime, James.
They've not been failures. They've released the wolves successfully, and then the wolves have met the fate that they expected. They've been shot or they've been poisoned with 1080, and roadkilled in one instance, and those sorts of problems. And those are inevitable. You're going to see that, especially when you're releasing captive-born wolves or wolves that are habituated. And one of those wolves was an habituated wolf that was transferred out of the U.S. But let's look at a reality about this wild-born. I know the enviros make a big deal out of the wild-born wolves. Bullshit. You release a pregnant wolf to the wild. Where is she going to have her pups? In the wild.
Hello.
That's not a wild-born, a litter of pups that's out there.
No, I understand. If they're not wild, naturally wild, and they have that human aversion, any captive reared is going to be habituated.
Habituated.
That's the only thing you can say.
And the more protective the person raising the wolf in captivity is, the more habituated the wolf is going to be.
Yeah.
All right. What say you, James?
Hey, I mean, it's just an example of how interested people are on this subject. I mean, we could go on and on talking about it.
Well, we don't necessarily need to do the fishing report. If you want to stay with this, I'm good with it.
No. Let me just throw the report in there, just
All right, just this once.
All that work you did this week? Nah, don't worry about it, Jim. Go. That's okay. We don't care, right? Yes, we do. I want to know what's going on the mother lake.
I do too.
Here you go. There are sure signs that we are in a fall fishing pattern on Roseville Lake. This week, I got reports of bass being caught in 2 feet of water all the way down to 45 feet of water.
Yeah, buddy, shallow bass.
Yep, and as Don can tell you, this is the time of year that the bass start to spread out. I mean, they're just feeding as heavily as they can while the water temperatures are still in the 70s because they know the colder water and slower metabolisms are on the way. So they are actively feeding and they're pushing. 2 separate techniques that are needed. One is for bass that are pushing shad into shallow water, and they're feeding as they push the shad into the backs of coves. So top water baits like Popars, Rio Ricos, or spooks and buzz baits are working good on those. There's other bass that are in wolf packs, groups of bass that are pushing bait balls into 100 feet of water, and then they just sit there all day long just picking shad off the edge.
Pounding them. Yes!
And for those, you want to be using a deep diving crankbait like a DD22 or a jigging spoon like a crippled herring or a Castmaster. A guy told me that on a Castmaster he caught 30 bass in about 40 casts.
Wow. Let me throw something else in the equation, the suspending TD minnow. Just saying.
I'll throw something else in, and it's not about the kind of fish that Jim is talking about, which are great fish, but big fish. Big fish are starting to move up too on points and ledges, and people are beginning to make use of big spoons again. And swim baits are starting to come back in now as the fish move up too. I have a friend, 5 fish, 32 pounds, in Arizona Lake.
Whoa.
I will not tell you what lake. I will not tell you where, because he would shoot me.
You think you're leaving here without that information being imparted?
No, that's easy. That smells like saguaro canyon.
Yeah, Don, you're right.
I'm
just
saying.
You're right. One of those two.
The other thing that I'm still getting reports on, and it's getting actually late in the year for this, but where Terry's talking about ledges and drop-offs like that, guys are still using the drop shot technique and still doing very well on them. 4 or 6 inch, it does seem like a translucent color. A worm is working better than a solid color. But there's still a lot of drop shot fish being caught, which kind of surprises me. I think that the fish would be more into a chase mode, where a drop shot is more like an easy kind of meal kind of technique. But nonetheless, it's still working pretty good.
Any reports on crawdads or chicken craws?
I haven't heard anybody talking about.
You know why? Because they don't want anybody else to know it.
But the the other thing, we would talk last week about the water being so chocolate down there that you just couldn't see even 6 inches into the water. That changed dramatically this week. And it's more of a stained, very stained, but it's back to the greenish kind of color, which is a good thing. And most fishermen, especially crappie fishermen, they like that little bit of stain to the water where it's not gin clear and it's not chocolate like it was a couple weeks ago. So although there's still good water coming into the lake, both the Sano and the Salt River are running at a more than 100% of their normal rate for this time of year. The mid-lake portions are clearing up and doing really good for fishing.
Let me throw one thing out there that young guys don't know anything about. It's called the Smithwick Devil Horse. The over on Goose Flats, about 11:30 in the afternoon, you bring that Smithwick right down that ledge.
Don.
Got it. Nice. All right, back to you, James. I'm having flashbacks here.
All right. Hey, a fast update on crappie fishing, because the closer we get to stable weather in November, the more excited crappie anglers seem to get. Talked to several guys this week, said they're catching 12 to 15 crappie in just a few hours in the morning. A lot of local guys fish from about 8 o'clock in the morning until noon. And regardless of what the crappie are doing, they leave them. And so they're finding them in 25 to 35 feet of water. They're still fishing them vertically, always with rock piles, ledges, or brush.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one bait, 2 or 3 different guys talked about this little fishy that we've talked about on your show before.
The little fishy, that's just wrong. They need to name it something else.
It's a 1/16 ounce jig head. And guys that are expert at using these things, they can lower it right into the center of a bush where a school of crappie will be sitting and just jerk them out of there. So crappie fishing is getting better. It's going to continue to get better over the next couple of months on Roosevelt.
Good stuff. Let me give you just a quick update on the saltwater side. The 3/4 day boats, 57 anglers out on 2 boats, 197 yellowtail, 13 bonito, and a halibut. We don't care about that. Day boats had 54 guys out, 65 Rattle, 98 yellowfin, and 12 skipjacks. Now the 2.5 day boats are not included in that. Top Gun 80's out first day on a 2.5 day, 25 guys, 100 plus yellowfins, 80 plus yellowtail, 6 bluefins. James, it's all good, man. Good report. Hang in there with us, and you can close the show out with us. I'm Don McDowell with
Terry Johnson.
Special K.
And we'll be right back.
My heart beats faster out of my face.
All righty, we're back. Hey, James, I want to give you a little update. Here's some, the last couple of weeks we've been talking over on the saltwater side right out of San Diego. They've been catching wahoo, which is just absolutely weird. Great fish. Normally they don't get any further north than Laos Rocks, maybe a little bit, which is 455 miles off the point. Last year there were only 8 marlins caught, tagged, and released. As of October 15th, there has been 68 marlins.
Whoa,
man! Caught, tagged, and released. So,
I was reading that, Don. Today, in the article that I was reading, said that because of the strange weather that we've been having off the coast there, that's having an impact in pushing the fish in closer to the shore than what they'd normally run.
Well, it's all current related. The wahoo is an extremely warm water, a high metabolism, extremely fast. In fact, that's one of the fastest fishes in the ocean. But these are all, the marlin too. They're following the warm water current, and some of the storms that we've been having shoving these currents around, and it's all good. Terry, we've got a few minutes to close this thing up. I want to thank you for coming down, and my hat's off to you for all the hard work that you've done trying to get this thing under control. What's the next step for the constituency to help?
The next step is to try and rebuild the coalition, work with the ranchers, and try to make sure that they understand what's going on. And
can we, the people, sign on to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at developing a couple of letters right now. We're going to be looking for groups to sign on to those letters. I've put the first draft out for review Another week we'll have it. One will go to Fish and Wildlife Service and remind them that even though they've taken a good step with the state of Arizona, they have left behind their tribal, their local government, and their cooperating agencies.
They can't do that.
They can't do that.
They think they can.
They think they can, exactly. And then the other letters to the Game and Fish Commission to salute them for their effort to carry this ball, despite the problems that Fish and Wildlife Service has created through its process mismanagement. And the other is to don't forget the folks that brought you here.
Okay.
Talk back to the stakeholders.
How do we get this across to Trent Franks, Matt Salmon, and Gosar? Those three are probably the top of the line congressmen, and John McCain.
Every group that's out there that has an interest in wolf reintroduction, and whether it's positive, negative, whatever it might be, every group needs to take a look at these two letters when they go out here in another week and a half or so. And if you agree with what's in those letters, you need to pick it up and take it to your congressman. You need to get it to them so that they're hearing from all of their constituents that, hey, these are things that we believe in. Restoration of state and tribal management of Mexican wolves. That's the primary thing.
And at the same time, you need to put you guys on notice. We need to take back Iraq. We need to close the borders. We need a ban on Ebola. Laugh if you want to. I'm talking to my doctor. We've got a gap in the wall down here. We've got third world country. We've got EV8 here that came across with little Guatemalan and Nicaraguan kids. It's killing kids in our school system. We've got guys that, coming into Atlanta. I mean, what's it going to take? One more death? 10,000 more deaths?
Takes the right death. We have a rabies eradication program in this country, and there's a very simple reason that we have this $25 million a year rabies bait placement to hold rabies back. Nobody cared until a congressional member's daughter died in Texas.
Well,
of rabies.
let's start sending them over to Liberia instead of our National Guardsmen.
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly opposed to sending National Guardsmen, especially after they've been taken back to status prior to World War II. They've been demilitarized, if you will. We've had over 4,000 soldiers killed in Iraq, over 48,000 wounded. Obama has given it away. He's not the president that ended the war. He's the president that gave Iraq up. We just gave it up. And, the nonsense we're seeing in Kobani is a distraction. While they're taking over Anbar province, they've surrounded on two sides Baghdad, city of 7 million people. They've got MiG-21 jets that are armed. They have fuel. They have bullets and rockets. And the distraction out of the White House is Ron Klahr, now the Ebola czar, because Obama doesn't have balls enough to fire Friedman. I mean, it's like, what in the hell is going on here? And we're worried about wolves. We're worried about the Center for Biological Diversity. Why don't they go deal with Ebola? It's a biological agent.
Everyone chooses their battles.
I'm just saying. I'm extremely frustrated at the system. I'm extremely frustrated at the politicians for letting this thing happen. We've got 2 years to go. I don't know where we're going to be. I know where the 6 years has brought us. I'm scared to death, not for me, for our kids and our grandkids, what the next 2 years is going to bring.
All I can say is that as long as the American public elects officials who allow that to happen, we get the representative democracy we deserve.
We need to turn the whole thing over to Ram drivers pulling Ranger bass boats with 30-30s.
You betcha. Oh, Winchester 94, the most magic rifle ever.
You got it.
Patrick, would you get medications for two, please? Medications
with a hex
for two.
barrel?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I mean, old style.
Hex barrel, open sights.
Oh, man.
All right, James, anything to add on your behalf, sir?
Just one closing thing. Terry, can you give us a contact email or tell us where the public can see these letters when they get released?
I actually, me, TEEBEEJ @gmail.com. Gmail.com.
Do that again?
TEEBEEJ @gmail.com.
Oh, here's a news flash for you. 100 soldiers from the 101st Army Airborne Division arrive in Liberia to fight Ebola. Thanks, Obama.
And so it starts.
I don't see a 30-30, even a 30-6. I don't see anything that's going to fight Ebola by bringing bodies in.
Raid.
No.
Lysol. Chlorine.
Yeah.
Those are hard things. But
it's hard times we live in, my friend.
They are. They're complicated times. It is not a Sesame Street world. You can't solve everything with a 30-second soundbite.
And there is no easy solution to it.
Big Bird with the 30-30.
And it's still the best damn system in the world.
It is, but
it's getting fractured pretty badly.
In 2 years, hopefully the midterm elections, as stupid as that whole thing is, we may be able to get the Senate and the Congress back.
Gee, you mean 400 bills that are sitting on Harry Reid's desk?
Harry Reid, if they really wanted to do something productive, you suit Harry Reid up, send him over to help the Ebola patients in Liberia. In Nigeria. I mean, what's going on with the Boko Haram? They're down there. They've killed over 5,000 Christians in the last month. It's ISIS, it's Hamas, it's Boko Haram, it's Al Qaeda, it's this, it's that. There's no coverage. There's no coverage. It's the same guys.
Yeah.
They got the same guns. They got the same bullets. They got the same ideology. When's it going to quit?
Not in my lifetime.
No.
Not in mine.
No. It just James, help me out here. Any elk bugling?
I don't know where we go from here, brother.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, it's a sad state of affairs. I'm going to take the rest of the day off, and I'm going to do the same thing I did last weekend. I'm going to go hug my grandkids, hang out at Sportsman's Warehouse, drive the big Army truck, and probably go shoot the 30-30 today.
And drive that Ram truck.
Ram. They call it Ram for a reason. Say, James, I got to ask you a question. Terry, maybe you can help me out with this. When in the hell did a Toyota pickup become a tactical vehicle?
When they started being built in Kentucky.
Right on. Yeah, that's another thing. You watch Kentucky on the elections in Harlan County.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, baby. There's some bad things going on.
All right, so all we can basically hope for is that there, in this midterm election, that the Senate finally goes over to Republican side, or at least 51 senators, right?
Yeah, we'll get Mitchell in there as the leader from Kentucky.
I'm sure glad someone has hope for the
process.
Federal government.
I don't have hope for it, but I think it'll get it off dead center if there's a controlling House and Senate both on the Republican
Yeah,
basis.
well, Harry Reid, he just needs to go help out the National Guardsmen over there in Liberia. That's the least that somebody can do.
And the pendulum will swing this way, and then 4 years later it'll swing that way, and it just swings. And